Howdy Beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Howdy Beans podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Grunt, the soldier on the battlefield fighting the bug scum. Would you like to know more? If you would, keep listening. Host of the Howdy Beans podcast. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're good as per usual. Today, we're going to be looking at Starship Troopers, the movie from 1997, a movie that is older than me by a year, which is not really important. I just thought I'd add that out there into the ether. But before we get into the movie, before we get into all of that, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping because my house is full of bugs and I've got to exterminate them, nuke them from orbit. So, without further ado, make sure that you follow me on Twitter, now known as X, at howdybeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And finally, if you listen to this on Spotify on your mobile phone, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating. Also, with Spotify, you can now leave comments. So down below on the Spotify page that you're listening to this, you can leave comments and feedback just like you can do on YouTube. So make sure to leave all feedback down there. I greatly appreciate it. So, as I mentioned today, and we're looking at Starship Troopers. Now, before I get into it, I just want to sort of mention how ironic this movie is for me. And the main reason for that is the fact of this is the film that I always use as an example. It's always, whenever the conversation comes up, going, oh, I don't want to cover this, I don't want to cover that because everybody covers this. I want to be the unique voice out there in the podcasting space. And that everybody covers like Starship Troopers because it's a big popular movie. So they know that if you cover Starship Troopers, it will get a lot of listens, it will get a lot of downloads, and X, Y, and Z. Not to say that Starship Troopers isn't worth recovering. Absolutely, it's not, because it's a brilliant movie. And again, as we'll talk about today, a lot went into the production, and I actually generally really, really do love this film and the whole trilogy of movies, even though the sort of sequels get quite bad as they go on. They're still quite campily good. The point is I'm trying to make is the fact of I'd always use this movie as an example of like, I didn't want to cover this film and films like Back to the Future and that because I didn't feel like I had a voice that I could add to them, and that I wanted to cover other movies that other people don't talk about. Like, for example, when I looked at Watership Down and things like that, it's a movie that is wonderful, but people don't really touch it. But I still feel like it's a film that should be talked about. And it's ironic that I decided to talk about this movie. And the reason being is the fact of I recently this year decided to sit down for the first time and read Robert A. Heinlein's novel of Starship Troopers, the one that started it all. And the book and the movie are completely different. One, like the book really, really goes into the idea of anti-war, about anti-capitalism, colonialism, and the war machine, and that you are just a grunt, that you've been thrown into the meat grinder, and they don't care if you live or die. It's a fact of just keep throwing you at the enemy, and hopefully you or the enemy will be whittled down enough where they can send in the heavy machine artillery, the heavy guns, things like that. And the book is very anti-war. It's so well written, and the characters are brilliant. And it, for a short novel, like, it's one of those that really sticks with you. And as I was listening to it, I kept thinking about it like, wow, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Because I am a pacifist. I don't like violence. I don't like war. I don't think they should be war and things like that. So from reading that book, I was like, wow, that's incredible. And that is how I could figure, that's my angle. That's how I can cover Starship Troopers. And I figured my way I'll be able to cover a movie like this is the same way that I did with Watership Down, and it's the same way that I did with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which was another movie that really, really made me nervous and was a movie that scared me because I am so of a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson and of Fear and Loathing that I thought to myself, there's no way I can do that movie justice. But I did. It was a long one, but I enjoyed it, and the reception from listeners and fans of Hunter S. Thompson has been astounding. So again, thank you for listening to it. And I thought that's my way. That's my way in to cover this movie, is the fact of, like I did with Hunter S. Thompson and I did with Watership Down, I'm not only going to talk about the movie itself, but I'm going to talk a bit about the book, because that is kind of taking another thing that I love and I'm very passionate about, but also add it in to give a bit more sort of in-depth and my thoughts and feelings into the overall sort of story of Starship Troopers. And again, it is the book that led to the movie being made in the first place. So, that is my way coming into it. But I just wanted to talk about that because I did find it kind of funny and ironic, the fact of this was the movie that I always go, I won't cover it because everybody else covers it. It's too popular. It's too big. I want to do something original. And here I am talking about it. I find it funny. So I just wanted to sort of go into talking about that. Anyway, now I've gotten that out of the way, we can get back to form. So this is the synopsis of the movie. For anybody that doesn't know, that hasn't seen this wonderfully incredible movie, that actually, in my opinion, still stands up today, especially the visuals anyway. The visuals still stand up today. Absolutely brilliant. So this is a sort of story synopsis for the movie. So in a not so distant future, with the Earth governed by the militaristic United Citizenship Federation and multitudes of highly evolved Klendathu arachnids threatening the safety of our solar system, high school athlete Johnny Rico and 3 of his hometown friends join up to do their part and to ensure humankind's future. An all-out invasion has begun. However, in this far-off exoplanet hostile to life as we know it, brute force alone and conventional strategies won't cut it. Now, the unstoppable bug army is at the gates. Will Rico and his fellow Starship Troopers end up serving as cannon fodder, or will they actually save the day? And that is the plot for Starship Troopers, for anybody who doesn't know. Also, I want to read you the blurb on the back of the book. So it goes as follows. 5,000 years in the future, humanity faces total extermination. Our one defense, highly trained soldiers who scour the metal-strewn dark blackness of space to hunt down a terrifying enemy, an insect life form they call bugs. This is the story of Trooper Johnny Rico, from his idealistic enlistment in the infantry of the future through his rigorous training to the command of his own platoon, and his destiny is a war that will span the galaxy. So that is the blurb on the back of the book. There are differences to the movie and to the books. Like in the book, it is like they are super soldiers. Like they wear exoskeletons, like power armor. They're like, if you've watched Edge of Tomorrow, sort of the Tom Hanks movie, very much on the strength of that. They've got these big exosuits on, like Hell Jumpers as well. If you've played the game Hell Jumpers, they jump out of planes and they get lowered down. And it is it's very sort of militaristic, the book is, and it goes into detail about infantrymen and what it's like to be an infantryman and being on the front lines, being like a Marine, really. Like I've never had any sort of army service, but being on the front lines, being like Rangers, being the first people that are sent in to fight whatever dangers are there, and then to be last ones out, sort of thing. The book's absolutely brilliant, and I'll talk about the book in a lot more detail in a minute. But before then, I want to talk a little bit about the sort of book's origins before we sort of get on to the movie part. So the writing and publication. So Robert Heinlein, and I feel like I'm pronouncing his name wrong, was among the best-selling science fiction authors of the 1940s and 1950s, along with Isaac Asimov, who's a brilliant author, as well as Arthur C. Clarke, who is another brilliant author, which I highly recommend both of them. They were known as the Big Three. They dominated US science fiction. In contrast to the others, Heinlein firmly endorsed the anti-communist sentiment of the Cold War era in his writing. Heinlein served in the US Navy for 5 years after graduating from the United States Naval Academy in 1929. His experience in the military profoundly influenced his fiction. At some point between 1958 and 1959, Heinlein put aside the novel that would become Strangers in a Strange Land and wrote Starship Troopers. His motivation arose partly from his anger at US President Dwight Eisenhower decision to suspend US nuclear tests and the Soviet tests that occurred soon afterwards. Writing in his 1980 volume Expanded Universe, Heinlein would say that the publication of a newspaper advertisement placed by the National Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy on April the 5th, 1958, calling for a unilateral suspension of nuclear weapons testing by the United States sparked his desire to write Starship Troopers. Heinlein and his wife, Virginia, created the Patrick Henry League in an attempt to create support for the US nuclear testing program. Heinlein stated that he used the novel to clarify his military and political views. Like many of Heinlein's books, Starship Troopers was completed in a few weeks. It was originally written as a juvenile novel for New York publishing house Scribner. Heinlein had previously had success with this format, having written several such novels published by that publisher. The manuscript was rejected, prompting Heinlein to end his association with that publisher completely and to resume writing books with adult themes. Scholars had suggested that Scribner's rejection was based on ideological objections to the content of the novel, particularly in its treatment of military conflict. The magazine of fantasy and science fiction first published Starship Troopers in October and November in 1959 as a two-part serial titled Starship Soldier. A senior editor of Putnam's, Peter Israel, purchased the manuscript and approved revisions that made it more marketable to adults. Asked whether it was aimed at children or adults, he said at a sales conference, "Let's let the readers decide who likes it." The novel was eventually published by G.P. Putnam's and Sons. So that is a bit of sort of the writing and publication of the book. I won't go too much into the book because, again, today we're going to be talking about the movie, more importantly. But there are a lot of differences, as I mentioned, the exoskeletons and stuff like that. But what I loved about the book and what I find with the movie is the fact of the book is very much... You follow Johnny as he goes through enlistment. How he doesn't want to go into war. He's not interested. Like he comes from a family where they are very strong in believing that, you know, because in this world, to be a citizen, you have to do service. Now, service is voluntary. Service is something that you have to choose to do. And Johnny and his family don't want to serve at all. And he wasn't going to. In the book, Johnny was like, he's not going to. Like, his dad's managed to get him a really big, incredible job. He's got him a brand new car. Like, life is brilliant, right? And then he goes with his mate, who is played by Carl, who's played by Neil Patrick Harris in the movie. He goes with him, and his mate signs up, like he's going to be a genius. He's going to make brand new weapons and all this and that. And then Carmen's there, and he goes with his mate to drop him off. Carmen's like, "Oh, you sign up too, Johnny?" And he's like, "Yeah," you know, because again, Carmen, she's gorgeous. He's in love with her. So they go. He signs up, and I love this scene in the book. You've got the recruiting officer. And like the recruitment officer, I think he's in a wheelchair, or like he's got robotic legs. Basically, he said his legs blown off, like they're removed. I think he's got like robotic legs, or one robotic leg anyway. And he's very stern faced. And his mate goes up and he's like, "Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that." And he's like, "Oh, all right, you know, sign it." Then Johnny comes up and he's just like, "Look, you don't want to join." And you've got this whole scene between him and Johnny for quite a few pages of like, "You don't want to join." He's like very anti-war. Like, "Are you sure about this? Are you just doing it because the girl battered her eyelids at you?" Sort of thing. "You know, I've been doing this for years. I've served. I know who has it and who doesn't have it." That girl there, Carmen, she's got the spark. She's going to be a pilot, and I thoroughly believe she's going to be a pilot. Your mate is a bit cocky, but I can tell there's some genius in him there. With you, I can't see anything in you, and he's really trying to like don't do it, sort of thing. And Johnny goes through the tests, and you know, after you've done all the tests and done all the examinations, I think you've got 24 hours or 72 hours around, but then to change your mind. And after then, like don't worry, but you've only get one choice. Like, once you get one choice of service, and if you back out, that's it. You know. And Johnny thinks about it, blah blah blah, and in the end, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it. Screw it," and he goes in it. And what I love, after you've had that sort of back and forth for his long process of like, "Don't do it. Are you sure?" Blah blah blah. He meets the guy again, and the guy's very happy. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you're an infantryman. Oh, that's great." Completely demeanor is completely different. Shaking Johnny's hand and all this and that. And Johnny's very bewildered. And he's like, "Look, son, you know, I've got to do that because I've got to get people in the door, but I've got to weed out the ones that aren't here for it, because at the end of the day, if you're an infantryman, you want somebody who wants to be there. You want to be able to trust the guy in the foxhole next to you, because if you can't trust him to make the right decision about what he wants to do with his life, you can't trust him to make the right decision when it comes to saving your life and his own and your team's life, you know." And then the books are like that a lot. There are moments where you like, oh, you know, you see the positive sides of being in the army and things like that, you know, the companionship and service and that. But then you see the negative sides, and you get Johnny's sort of the way he is in the book, how he's constantly sweeping, like he's very proud and he wants to be part of the team. He wants to do the best he can, but he's also seeing the dark sides of it and stuff like that. And it's very anti-war. It's very anti-service, but at the same stage, it's very much of like, this is the consequences of war and stuff like that. And how Johnny kind of gets, I would say, you could say brainwashed, you could say sort of gets sucked up into that life, and he basically, he becomes like a career sort of commander, sort of captain, and it's the book's brilliant. To be honest, I on its own, I recommend the book just itself. Like, if you're not interested in the movie, I highly recommend you read the book. It's not very long. It's about close to 300 pages thereabouts. It's very short, and you can get it done within about a week or two if you really sort of sit down and read it. But yeah, I just wanted to do like a brief sort of my feelings on the book. As for the movie, is what the main thing that we're going to be talking about today. So talk about the cast. So we have Casper Van Dien as Johnny Rico, Denise Richards as Carmen, Diana Myers as Dizzy, Jake Busey as Ace, Neil Patrick Harris as Carl, Clancy Brown as Sergeant Zim. Sergeant Zim is actually a bigger part to play in the books than he does in the film. And it's a shame that they got somebody like Clancy Brown as Sergeant Zim, and that we don't get to see as much of him as we should do, that we get to see, because majority of the book is actually of Rico in basic training. Majority of it is him training to be an infantryman, and how he changes and how his mindset changes and all that. It's fascinating. But yeah, we lost out of having more Clancy Brown. We should have got more. But anyway, I digress. Then we have Seth Gillum as Sugar Watkins, Patrick Muldoon as Xander, Michael Ironside as Gene Razak. I can never pronounce his name in the movie. But basically, the Roughnecks leader. Ruth McClellan as the biology teacher, Marshall Bell as the General Owen, Eric Brooksotter as Breckenridge, Matt Levine as Kitten Smith, and Blake Lindsay as Katrina. Oh, and you've got Brenda Strong as Captain Delilah, yeah. It's kind of funny that Gene, or sort of Michael Ironside's character, the leader of the Roughnecks, he's not actually in the book that much. He a lot of his moments are very philosophical, because the idea in the book that, because they do a thing, I think it's called is it citizenship or sort of citizenship studies? So I can't remember the name. Sorry, it's been a while since I read the book. It was a few months ago. But basically, they have these lessons. Let's for argument's sake, let's call them citizenship lessons, right? And the idea behind these lessons, it's not to tell you how to be a good citizen. It's a lot of it is the philosophy as to why why their shall we say idea of life, why this planet, why you have the military, why you have the government, why everything that happens, why it is the way it is. And it's a very philosophical, and a lot of the things that he comes out with, it makes you think about life now, to be honest. I'm sure when this book came out, it was the same thing, but you do sort of question the idea of life and why we do what we do, why humans the way they are. It's incredibly fascinating. But majority of his moments in the book were very philosophical, where he would be Johnny's teacher, as he is in the movie, trying to teach him like that. But he's not actually a soldier in the book. He was a former soldier, but he doesn't join up the sort of in the infantry and becomes sort of the leader of the Roughnecks. That's somebody else. But I think I think it's great that you got somebody like Michael Ironside. You're like, look, if we're going to have him, we're going to have him, which was like a brilliant change that I thought was fantastic. So that is the cast of the film. As for the production, which is a very, very long to get into the production, so I've managed to break it down as best I can. So it goes something like this. So since the release of RoboCop in 1987, producer John Davison had aimed to develop another project that would reunite key members of its creative team, including writer Edward Numia and stop-motion animator Phil Tippett. Numia and his co-writer Michael Miner had struggled to develop new story ideas in the intervening years, and realizing their partnership was no longer effective, Numia began working alone on a story treatment titled Bug Hunt at Outpost 7. His treatment was intended to be a comedic war film pitting the heroes against insects, chosen due to his wife's fear of them, set against the backdrop of a teenage romance story. In December 1991, Numina brought his treatment to Davison at Warner Brothers, which also headquartered TriStar Pictures, with whom Davison had a pre-existing development deal. Davison realized the treatment bore similarities to the 1959 science fiction novel Starship Troopers. The novel had received a strongly divided reception on its release for promoting military power and necessary violence while criticizing liberal social programs, but had remained a popular work. Newman and Davison considered directly adapting Starship Troopers, but Davison assumed the film's adaptation rights would already be taken and encouraged Newman to continue his treatment, which was then retitled to Outpost 7. By late 1992, Newman had completed the Outpost 7 treatment, alternatively known as Bug Hunt. Davison presented it to TriStar executives Chris Lee, who rejected it. Newman and Davison learned that the rights for Starship Troopers were available and instead pitched an adaptation of the novel using elements of Outpost 7. Lee was more receptive, and the pair also gained support from other executives, including TriStar head of production Mike Medovy, who had supported their work on RoboCop. The rights to Starship Troopers were purchased, and Numina began adapting Outpost 7 to more closely fit Heinlein's work and novel. As for development of Starship Troopers, so it goes. Process was slow as TriStar regularly replaced executives, including Medovy, and high-cost or high-risk projects, like Starship Troopers, were more closely scrutinized. Davison spent much of 1993 securing several key crew, including Tibet and RoboCop director Paul Van Hoven. Newman and Davison said Van Hoven was their only choice to direct Starship Troopers because they determined the fantastical creatures and the genre and the political subtext suited his creative sensibilities. Van Hoven recruited Alan Marshall as a producer, having worked with him on Basic Instinct and his most recent project, Showgirls. Despite Van Hoven's previous success leading into the early 1990s, he was in need of a promising project as his efforts to develop the pirate adventure Mistress of the Seas and the Arnold Schwarzenegger starring Crusade had failed. Showgirls would go on to fail financially and earn him the worst reviews of his career. By 1994, TriStar remained reluctant to move Starship Troopers into pre-production. Key crew members, including Davison and Van Hoven, decided to produce test footage to demonstrate their intended visual style and tone. TriStar paid $225,000 towards development of Bug Test, a brief scene filmed at Vasquez Rocks near Los Angeles on July the 21st, 1994. Although still busy filming Showgirls, Van Hoven directed the sequence, which was filmed by John Hora and a 30-person crew. The sequence depicts a soldier, played by Mitch Gaylord, sorry, I'm a child, being pursued and killed by two warrior bugs, which were animated by Tibet Studios. Newman makes a cameo appearance as a dead soldier. The visual effects were finished by September, and the test footage screened for TriStar executives in early October. Executives, including Lee and Mark Canton, were impressed with the visual effects and did not realize they were computer-generated imagery. They approved moving into pre-production, but other executives remained non-committal on providing any substantial funding. In early 1995, Davison developed a detailed budget totaling $90 million. Based on Newman's third draft, TriStar rejected this amount, citing the financial failure of the $200 million budget Waterworld from 1995, which resulted in the firing of several executives at Universal Pictures. TriStar executives determined that to move forward, the cost of Starship Troopers had to be split with a business partner. Davison screened the Bug Test for potential suitors. Attracting the interest of Walt Disney Studios, an agreement which was reached between TriStar, its parent company Sony Pictures, and Disney to produce Star Wars via TriStar and Disney's Touchstone Pictures, splitting the budget costs and box office profits evenly in exchange for Touchstone receiving all distribution rights to the film outside of the United States and Canada. Each studio was also given creative input on the film and its marketing. I did not know this movie was a Disney film. So there you go. Starship Troopers. Johnny Rico's a Disney princess, everybody. You heard it here first. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the writing, and I'll talk a bit about the pre-production. There's a lot to talk about the writing and the pre-production, but we haven't got time. So as for a little bit into the writing, so Numia began adapting the Starship Troopers novel at the beginning of 1993. Working from his office in Eagle Rock, Los Angeles, he was concerned about how to translate the tone of Heinlein's work because of the controversies around its release, which identified Heinlein as an alternatively a conservative, militaristic, libertarian, and fascist. The novel exposes the benefits of military service, citizenship, and masculinity. Heinlein described the central theme as being that a man, to be truly human, must be unhesitatingly willing at all times to lay down his life for his fellow man. This theme is based on the twin concepts of love and duty and how they are related to the survival of our race. Numia and Davison wanted to accurately depict the novel's viewpoint and believed that audiences would appreciate the concept of a failing democracy and stricter cultural controls. Certain aspects of the novel were challenging for Numia to adapt. While he considered the first and third acts narratively strong, he felt the middle act, focusing on Rico's boot camp experience, was an overly long piece, preaching to Heinlein's readership, which would not translate well to film. To address this, he identified key elements such as the high school opening, boot camp battles, and the underlying philosophy and socio-politics to compensate for the slower second act. He expanded on certain themes, including the teenage romance, drawing from his own experiences and pursuing women who had no interest in him. The first draft was completed on July the 8th, 1993. It remained generally faithful to Heinlein's novel, including a secondary alien race known as the Skinnies, the Bounce, a technology allowing infantry members to make jet-assisted superhuman jumps, and power armor, which generated the troops' superhuman strength. A copy was sent to Heinlein's wife, who was pleased with it. Van Hoven tried and failed to read the novel, finding it uninteresting and too politically right-wing. He had Numia summarize the narrative and found it militaristic, fascist, and overly supportive of armed conflicts, which clashed with Van Hoven's childhood experience in the German-occupied Netherlands during World War II. Van Hoven decided to use the basic plot to satirize and undermine the book's themes by deconstructing the concepts of totalitarianism, fascism, and militarism, saying, all the way through, I wanted the audience to be asking, are the characters crazy? His contributions to Newman's second draft included developing the romantic subplot between Rico and Carmen and combining the male character Dizzy with a Numia-created female character called Ronnie, who was romantically interested in Rico. This, in turn, led Numia to develop romantic triangles between Dizzy, Rico, Carmen, and Xander. And that's it, really, for the production of the movie. I'll talk a bit about the pre-production when we get into the actual review. But I'm very, very excited about this one. This is a movie I've seen countless of times, and it's going to be interesting going into it now with my sort of ideas of the book, having now read the book. And again, my interpretation of the book, it being very anti-war, especially for me personally. I was reading it, I was like, what is war? What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. And I guess other people might have read it and go, well, no, that's very pro-war. So it's going to be interesting to watch this movie now, having to read the book, now having those ideas and concepts in my head, and see how well it was translated, how different it is. Because I remember watching the movie and finding it very awesome, but then watching it as an adult, finding when watching the movie being very sort of, well, this seems to me, again, very anti-war, but also at the same stage being very pro-war. So it's going to be interesting to see the differences. It's going to see how my view has now changed, if at all, of the movie going in. So I'm excited. I've got my fingers crossed. So without further ado, I'm going to go off now and watch Starship Troopers. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about my first impressions, the story, production design, and my overall thoughts, and see if things have changed or not. Obviously, I know that there are differences, obviously, because again, they don't use power armor, but just to see, have my sort of thoughts and feelings changed. So I'm going to go off now and watch it. And then when we come back, we'll talk about it. So until then, I will see you in a minute. And welcome back, everybody. I'm just going to get straight into it. I absolutely love this movie. It's 2 hours of epic action and silliness, campiness, very 90s. There's boobs, there's war, there's gore, there's science fiction, like high sort of concept science fiction, and there's propaganda, and there's a lot of things that don't make sense, a lot of things that does make sense. But overall, it's 2 hours of fun. Never once have I watched this movie and never enjoyed myself. I've always enjoyed myself with this film, and for good reason, because it is brilliant. And no wonder it's considered such a cult classic. No wonder it's a movie that is so highly acclaimed and widely loved by so many audiences. Yes, it might not have been a major success when it came out, but like a lot of great things, they don't always are. And it's not until later on in their lifetime when they start to gain that notoriety where people go, you know, actually, that movie is a lot more smarter and cleverer than we gave it any sort of credit for. And this movie is, to be honest. And it's kind of funny because as I was watching it, again, how many times I've seen this movie, going into this film with the mindset that I have from reading the books and then going into it and then looking around realizing like none of this makes sense, because I'd always questioned this movie. Like there was a lot of the motives, a lot of the thing that the Federation and that the humans were saying, you know, about the bugs, about Clondathu. And when you really look at it and when you really sit down and think about it, none of it makes sense. And I'll get into more details in a second, but none of it makes sense. The propaganda is just propaganda. That's what it is. Like it's all lies. It's all sort of misrepresentation of the truth. Really, it's all to kind of make you want to fight for your country, to join the Federation, to join the mobile infantry and serve and become a citizen and all that. And then in this world, in this timeline, in this version of humanity, Federation is everything. War is everything. And without war, you don't have citizens. And without citizens, what is the point of your dictatorship, of your like claim to dominate this version of Earth and humans? You need a reason to be important, and that reason is war. But again, I'll get into sort of that a bit later. But I love it all. I just think it's a generally fantastic movie. And there are a lot of parts where you sit there and you go, this is aged really, really well. You know, because a lot of it was done by stop motion. A lot of the bugs were all puppets done by I think the same people that did not Starship Troopers, Small Soldiers and the Gremlins and things like that. A lot of it was stop motion. And it's aged well. And I've said this billions of times. I'm going to keep saying it until the day that I die. Like anything that's done where it's not heavily done on CGI, where it's either practical, it's a small model, small scale, or stop motion, or something to do with it's more human, it's more real, more realistic than it is computer generated. Anything like that, if it's done well, will age really, really finely and age really, really well. And this movie does. You know, even for the moments we get the CGI where it doesn't look so good. And there are moments where you sit there and go, that looks a bit ropey. You know, when you've got the giant you get the giant bugs that are shooting into the sky with like their giant sort of plasma cannon bombs sort of things. And you look at that and you're like, that's a bit ropey. That don't look good. But then you see the gore, and then you see like the Clondathu bugs, and you're like, you know what? I don't care. It looks great. Those bits, the bits that matters, the bits that actually you're interested in, you're invested in, those parts are still work. And yeah, and they actually went to there was no soundstage. Well, there probably was soundstage, but like they were on location. I love when movies go on location because it always benefits the movie. Granted, it is expensive. That's why you get a lot of big like Disney movies use the big giant sort of like screen technology where like you're in this small little, you're inside a big hangar really, and then there's loads of like OLED screens around you, so it's like it looks like you're in a big sort of wide area, but you're not. You're in like a small little area. They use them for a lot of movies now, and some of it sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. Disney uses it a lot for Star Wars specifically, as of late. But I love it when they go on set when they're in Death Valley and when they're in like these places, these canyons and gulches, it's like it feels like an alien world. It looks alien because there are parts of the Earth that look like Mars. There's part of this Earth that look very alien, and to use them to the benefit of the movie makes the movie even better. So like, yeah, my overall sort of impressions is I love this movie. I do. And how it compares to the book, obviously we'll get into it, but there are slight differences here and there. There are certain moments that like are beat for beat, page for page, or word for word from the book, where like certain line delivery, certain bits of dialogue, certain scenes. Obviously, they change Dizzy, so Dizzy is a woman in the movie, where in the book, it's Rico's best friend. He's a dude, and yeah, like there's a few differences here and there, but overall, it is close. It's not accurate because again, there's no sort of they haven't got no like big sort of power arm exosuits, sort of super suits that they've got. There's no jumping around like in the books and anything like that. And obviously the boot camps like scenes were a lot longer because again, as I said in the introduction, they shortened them down because that is the bulk of the book really. But even so, close. It's a very close representation to what the book is and what the book is trying to do. And it's kind of funny watching this movie. And I know it's meant to be a very pro-war. It's very, very pro, pro sort of like totalitarian sort of regime, that sort of thing. Like very sort of pro, like patriotism and all that jazz. But for me, and this is the wonderful thing about books, and this is the wonderful thing about movies, is everything is subjective. So even though the movie is trying to be very sort of gung-ho in terms of war, fight, war, join, fight, serve your country, blah, blah, blah. For me, I watch that and I see the propaganda. I see straight through it. I see all the things that it's trying to say are good. And I'm sitting there and more, it's like, I'm not interested. I don't want to fight. I don't want to join your war just because you say if I join, I'll become a citizen. That means nothing, really. And as I was watching the movie, I was just breaking it down in my head, being like, yeah, like I was figuring out, like, nah, see, it's all a trick, it's all a lie. And obviously, I'll get into it in a few minutes when we start talking about the story. But yeah, overall, first impressions, I generally thought it's still a brilliant movie and it still holds up and it's still one of my all-time favorites. And it makes sense why it's such a cult classic because it is just generally brilliant. The characters are great. Rico really comes into his own from being such a very naive guy that just follows, his penis and does what his hormones tell him to do. He follows a girl into the army, hoping that she'll be his forever love, and she ends up basically throwing him off, saying like, "Oh, it's not you, it's me, but I want my career over you," and that's it, really. And then he's stuck. But then, like his planet gets basically destroyed by an asteroid, which is Carmen's fault. But again, we'll get there. And then his whole story takes off and all that. So yeah, I just think like it's great. It's really, really good. Getting into sort of the nitty gritty, sort of the meat and potatoes of this film, the story. For anybody that doesn't know the story of Starship Troopers, basically it's set in the far future, and in this version of Earth, you have the Federation, which is I would imagine is, and it's not really explained really in the books, but it's basically the UNSC. It's like the United Nations that have come together, so everybody in the planet is under one belt, under the one Federation, the one group, and you can either be a citizen or you can just be somebody, an average Joe, basically. Somebody just lives their life. But to become a citizen, to have rights, to be able to do certain things that you want to do, you have to have military service. Now, military service is an option. You don't have to do it. But if you do it, you have a minimum of 2 years, which is a lie. And I'll break down why that's a lie in a minute. You get a minimum of 2 years service. Once you've done the 2 years service, you can have the right to leave. And then you can live your citizen life and do whatever it is you want. But the thing is, it's all a lie because once you've joined the service, you never leave the service. As I said, it's all about war, and war is a business. And if you have a federation, if you have a whole government that's kind of propagated over the idea of war and fighting and like serving your country and all that, you need an enemy. you can't fight each other because you can't pit two humans together. I know our history tells differently, but you can't pit two humans together in a federation where we're all together and then still be able to have people on your side. You need something else. You need a bigger baddie that's not humans to fight to get people on your side. Anyway, I got a bit off track there. The point is to make you become a citizen, you join the service, and then you go off to war and you fight the bugs. Or like in the books, there is a thing called the skinnies, which are like giant, like Nordic sort of skinny blue sort of aliens. You don't get a lot of them, but again, in that book as well, in the book it goes into more detail of like Johnny is in his power suit, he goes to take them out, and it's like a ghost, like snatch and grab sort of thing, where you go in there, you make as much damage and destruction as immensely possible, and then you get out there, you bug out, pardon the pun, you bug out as quick as possible, cause as much damage, and it's like a blitz. You just come in, make a little damage, get out, mass chaos and panic ensues, and then that leaves them open for direct attack elsewhere, or sort of you kind of like a Shadow Games, make them look at the left hand, but like look at the right hand's doing something else, that sort of thing. But obviously that's the book, that's nothing to do with the movie. Anyway, you've got Johnny Rico, he and his two friends Carmen and Neil Patrick Harris's character, I can't remember his name now, at the top of my head, all basically decide to join up. Johnny doesn't know if he wants to join up, but he's pussy whipped. And he basically goes, well, my girlfriend's going to join, so I'm going to impress her and I'm going to join, and she's going to love me forever and ever. She doesn't. She cares more about herself and her own career. And he joins up. She basically dumps him, tells him, it's not you, it's me. No, it's definitely you, love. It really isn't Rico. And yeah, he joins Mobile Infantry. He goes to fight bugs on Clandafu. You've got a smart bug. They've got to hunt it down. And that's kind of me condensing it, the 2 hours. Like, there's a lot more to it, obviously, but that's the idea and concept of it, is you join, you fight, you do 2 years minimum, and then you leave and you become a citizen, and you have more rights than the average Joe, the average person would have. That's the long and short of it, really. But the reason why I say it's a lie, as I said, war is a business. And when it comes to, like, you've made a foundation of the Federation is very warlike, very patriotic, and you have to serve your country. You can't convince people to serve, to join up, if you haven't got a reason for them to do it. So you look at the propaganda that's in the movie, and you've got all this sort of thing of before the bugs sort of throw a rock at Brenda Suarez, which, to be honest, makes no sense, and I'll get into that in a minute. But when, at the movie, before they do that, they're talking about, you've got to fight the bugs, the bugs are evil, the bugs are this. And then they show you a galaxy map, right? Now, I'm no genius, but I know space. I know how far light years are and how long distance is and how long it takes certain things to get from one side of one place to another. Where we are in the solar system, we are near the end of the Milky Way galaxy, really. We're close to one of the long arms of the Milky Way galaxy. Clendathu, their system, is billions of light years away on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. Even we've got, faster than light travel, it still take you millennia, sort of centuries to get there, right? They've got warp technology. So let's say, for argument's sake, they've got technology where they can get there within 6 minutes. Okay, we have that technology to do that. It's never stated at all that the bugs have this technology. They're a hive mind because they're a bug race, but they don't have the technology to do it. But somehow they can shoot an asteroid out of their asteroid belt perfectly to reach Earth, even though it's not propelled by anything. They hit it. Even if you hit it with a nuke, it would still take centuries to get to Earth. So how the hell is that asteroid coming all the way from Clandath? This is the question that nobody in this world's asking. How the hell is that asteroid getting all the way from Clandathu to Earth in the matter of days or weeks. By the time it got to us, the human race would be extinct. We wouldn't be on Earth anymore. To be honest, the sun would have expanded and would have swallowed the Earth and Mars and all the other planets, and all that would have been left would be like the outer rim planets like Jupiter and things like that. So again, it wouldn't happen. And this is the thing: you watch it, and you're thinking, why isn't this? None of this makes sense. I'm looking at this propaganda, being like, you expect me to believe this, that this bug race that is meant to be advanced but not that advanced to travel the stars can do this? Like, yes, they can shoot their like seed pods into the air, but still, it's going to take a long time for their seed pods to get to us. And by that stage, we would have advanced that much, or we would have gone extinct, or we would have just moved and gone to another planet. So again, what would have been the point? But this is the thing about when you have people that are indoctrinated, that believe what the Federation is telling them and the propaganda and the lies, they're not going to question it. And that is the grip that they have, because they have an enemy, because they have somebody like the bugs. When you have an ulterior enemy like the bugs on Clendathu, it doesn't matter what shit you shovel people, they will eat it up, because why would you lie about the biggest enemy humanity's ever faced? You see what I'm saying? That's the logic in this world, is the fact of all the propaganda, all of it is completely transparent and completely see-through. But if you was to believe what is being shoveled, you wouldn't see it. You'd go, that's true, that is. And then when the asteroid hits Buenos Aires and destroys it, you look at the propaganda and how quickly it changes. Big bright letters with fire in the back: war, fight. Big bright name, because again, it works to your sort of monkey brain. Big letters: war, fight, serve. And then they got like fire in the background, and they've got like this many people died and this many things, and then they show you actual footage of the death of the people that have been crushed by buildings and the animals. And even when like Johnny first gets to Clendathu, you've got a live war reporter on the scene going, it's really bad, it's really dangerous, it's unhospitable. He dies, right? The reporter dies. Now, the cameraman, any normal person, will run away. But like that's going to happen to me. I'm doing it. The cameraman is zooming in to the reporter, getting chopped up, getting eaten. He's zooming in. And even when he's died, he hasn't let go of the camera. He's still holding on. And he even manages to get a shot of Rico when he's fighting and being a hero. And that's the thing. There's no care for human life. It's all about a meat grinder. It's all about the perpetual motion of running this propaganda machine of like, keep shooting, no matter what, keep shooting. You've got to show the violence. You've got to show the bugs being bad, being evil, chopping people up. It's all about that. And you do. When you look at the propaganda, they show those scenes, and the movie starts with that scene, with that footage. And then you get to actually, and then as the movie goes on, you get to see the lead up to that, with like Rico and that. And then when Rico finally gets there, and you get to see the lead up, and then you see the propaganda of that actual scene and how they mix it in, being like, oh, this 100,000 men died in 1 hour. It's really, really bad and horrible. And then they show you the blood and the bits. And then it's that thing of like, oh, well, if you're in this world, you're going to believe that. Like, I'm going to serve. I'm going to make sure that never happens again. And it's funny, you have the admiral, you have the fleet sort of commander, the leader of the Federation, whatever you want to call him. He goes out and he goes, we've got to strike back at Clendathu. We've got to fight. And that's what leads to all those men dying. And then the next scene is like, that man has now stand down. Another person comes in, takes their place, and goes, well, it was a bad thing. We shouldn't have fought. We didn't know what was going into. But this time, we're going to do it better, and we're going to do it smarter. And that's the thing. As I was watching it, I'm sitting there thinking, it all feels staged. It all feels kind of like, if the landing, like the funny thing, if the landing party thing had won, it would have been the fact of, oh, I was right all along, don't worry about it. They were literally threw men at the problem, and because it didn't work, the guy moved back, but he didn't, like, he resigned from the role, but he wasn't put in prison, he wasn't put in chains or anything like that. Like, you had 100,000 men, women killed. No. He just steps down. Oh, I made a mistake. Boo-hoo. Okay, I'm going to stand over here. And then the next person comes in. And if she messed up, the next person would come. And that's what it is, really. It's just that perpetual motion. And that's the thing about this story, is the fact, when you start looking at these things, you start questioning of like, Why are we actually at war with the bugs? None of it makes sense, and none of it has really ever made sense to me. Especially, and it wasn't until I read the book and I'm sitting there and I'm questioning things of like, none of this makes sense. Why are they fighting the bugs? Why are the bugs a threat? They can't. They're on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy. They can't get to us because they don't have the technology to get to us, right? It's not feasible for them. So why would we fight in them? And then when you realize the reason we're fighting them is because inside the human brains, a lot of humans are scared of spiders. A lot of humans are scared of arachnids, are scared of those sort of creatures, those sort of monsters. So again, it's never mentioned in the book. It's not mentioned in the movie. But it wouldn't surprise me as if while humans are out, we're doing exhibitions, looking around, kind of Star Trek-y, looking around the galaxy, that they landed on sort of this Clendathu or came into the system, found the bugs, and either got attacked by them and decided, that's it, that's what we were looking for, that's the enemy we're looking for, that's going to be our new sort of prime target, or didn't even land, just saw them and attacked them. Because, again, the bugs are a hive mind, and it's proven in the movie they're quite clever. So it wouldn't make sense for them to want to attack another species on the other end of the galaxy, the universe, Milky Way. It doesn't make sense. So I think all along, I think the whole war has just been provoked. It's one of them fact of, I don't believe the bugs shot first. I think it was the humans that shot first, and the bugs are just protecting themselves. And that's all it is. The humans were looking for an enemy. We found an enemy that fits the archetypal sort of no care, no smarts, nothing. You can't relate to them because they don't look like you, so they're just evil. Blah 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 blah. And it's just that you're watching it, you're thinking, none of this makes sense, and it's all for nothing, because again, it's that song, wah, who, yeah, what is it good for? Absolute, and it is. It's all a propaganda, and it was just funny, just watching this film, being like, none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense. And then also, as you're watching the film, you realize it's Carmen who actually starts the big bug war, because there are many moments where we attack the bugs attack us, or do they attack us? Do we just attack ourselves? It wouldn't surprise me if it was just a random asteroid that just happened to come close to Earth, and just because it came from that general direction, that we just blame the bugs, because it's easier just to blame them, just instead of saying, oh, we messed up, because it goes on long time saying we've got planetary guns all the way around the moon. Granted, Carmen wasn't able to get a response out, but that's a big rock. How is it that all those orbital guns, not one of them saw it? Because no one was looking. Because nobody wanted to look. Because they wanted a reason to fight. It all makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, again, maybe this is conspiracy theory, but again, all those orbital guns, not one of them. And again, nobody's questioning it. Nobody's like, well, where's the orbital guns? But anyway, as I was saying, so Carmen, she basically starts this whole thing, this big bug war, because she's meant to be watching where she's going. She's clocked in a new flight path, so she's moved the ship going in sort of a more sort of fuel efficient, better sort of flight path, which again, it's all fine, all honky-dory. And then as she's not paying attention, as she's having a bit of sexy time with sort of Xander, sort of flirting and basically not doing her job, big alert, asteroid coming, says, oh God, no. So she tries to evade. As she evades, she hits the communication tower off the ship, and hits the asteroid, right? Now, all it takes is the smallest amount of force, because when there's no gravity, all it takes is the smallest amount of force just to knock something off course, or make something go in a completely different direction. Now, I don't know how fast the ship was going, but you could say it was going quite quick. Right, because again, they're traveling through space, and again, there's no gravity, so there's no friction. So when something moves, it's just going to keep going and progressively get faster. So they're going at a certain speed. They manage to dodge it. She hits it. That's enough force in my books to kind of put that asteroid off course, to make the asteroid, instead of skipping and going past Earth and not hitting Earth, hits Buenos Aires. And that's it. And not once does the captain ever go, well, why didn't you see it? Why did it take you so long to see it? She never once gets reprimanded, because why would you reprimand somebody that just did you a big favor and gave you something that you wanted, which was a war, give you a reason to fight? That's it. You know what I mean? So it was just funny, like watching the film and just being like, yeah, she started this big bug war. She's the reason why Dizzy died. And talking about Dizzy, right? Don't get me wrong, Denise Richards, she is gorgeous. She is. She's absolutely gorgeous. But in my opinion, and I felt this way since I was very young when I first watched this movie till now at 27, right? Diana Mayers, who plays Dizzy, she's not only fine, she is gorgeous. She is incredible. She has aged like fine wine. She was gorgeous then, and she is gorgeous now. And I always choose Dizzy. I've always chose Dizzy. Dizzy for me is my number one. Dizzy wouldn't have done this. Carmen would have, because Carmen's selfish, and all she cares about is herself. Whereas Dizzy would have saw the asteroid coming and roundhouse kicked it out of the way of humanity. You know what I mean? Yeah, Johnny should have always gone for Dizzy. Always. It's as simple as that. But yeah, I just I just love this movie. I think it's great. I think when you really break it down, none of it makes sense. But at the same stage, that's the point of the film. And that's the point of the story, and that's the point of Starship Troopers, is the fact of none of it makes sense. It's all meant to be very pro-war, but really, when you look at it, it's very counter-war. Really, it's very anti-war. It's very much the fact of you're following false prophets. You're following false leaders. What they're proclaiming to you is all false because none of it makes sense, and that's the point. The point is, it doesn't matter what they peddle or what they say. If you are a sort of patriot, if you want to be a citizen, you will listen to whatever they say, and no matter what it is, it's say what we say when we say it. Okay, I'll say it. I'll say it again. Now, can I go and shoot some bugs? That's what it is. That's all it is. At the end of the day, cut and dry. But I love it. I do. I really, really do. I think Starship Troopers is a brilliant film, and it's so well done. And like I said, the production design as well, when they're actually on sets, when they're on location, it looks like an alien planet. It looks what you would imagine a planet where the bugs would live like. It would be, deserty, sort of inhospitable. Doesn't look like it could support any life at all. It'd be barren because the bugs all live underground. And again, I know Starship Troopers, the book came out a long, long time ago, and then the movie came out in the 90s, and then Mass Effect came out in like 2007. But again, I was getting flashbacks to the Rachni as well from Mass Effect. It always leads back to Mass Effect. But the Rachni were the same. Like the Rachni wanted peace. They wanted to be left on their own. And it was because the Reapers were basically giving them a false signal, false song, as the Rachni call it, turned them evil and made them turn on the rest of the galaxy. And that started sort of the big Krogan war, which then led to the genophage and all that. But again, that started very much the same, which really, like, they were led into a war and made the rest of the galaxy fear them and fight them. And then the whole galaxy came together and sort of dealt with the problem. So again, there were like similarities, but it's just one of those things that I noticed. I thought, oh yeah, it's very much like the Rachni. But anyway, I went off course. So we're talking about Mass Effect. I was getting overexcited. But yeah, like, the sets are good as well. I love the technology. I love the way things look. One of the things that kind of irks me about this movie is, again, I'm not a marksman. I'm a good shot, but I'm not a marksman. But how they all shoot from the hip, it really annoys me, because I've played enough video games and I've done enough sort of shooting of like pellets and things like that to know that if you're going to aim, at least aim down sights. Shoot from the hip is good at close range, which, in all fairness, when you're fighting the arachnids, when you're fighting the bugs, they are very close range. But the issue, you just brain at that point. You just brain, at least aim down sights a bit. At least you can then get the nervous system or chop off a leg or two. Again, even though it explains in the propaganda, you can't just take out a leg because they're still dangerous. But at least if you aimed, you've got more chance of survival than just go, spraying and praying. You know what I mean? And that's the only thing that really bothers me about this movie. Honestly, in the whole 2 hours, the only thing that really bothers me is, like, somebody please aim down sights. Somebody to put the gun up to your eye and aim. I feel like the accuracy would improve and a lot more people would probably live and less people would die. This whole spray and pray, it's a waste of ammo. It looks good, and yeah, fair enough, close quarters. But when you're not close quarters and they're just shooting from the hip, it's one of those where I'm like, just pull it up just a bit to your eye. Just look and pew 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 pew. You know what I mean? Just up a bit. That's everything that bothers me. Apart from that, everything else is fine. As for sort of my overall thoughts, like I said, if it's not obvious by now, I love this film. Even though there are parts that doesn't make sense, the only reason it doesn't make sense is because I don't feel like it's meant to. I feel like, again, movies are subjective, books are subjective, but when you watch a movie like this, I feel like the whole point of it is kind of to be very much the fact of this war makes no sense. The whole propaganda side of it makes no sense. The whole Federation of it makes sense. It's just the fact of that's just the world that this film takes place in. That's just how that world works, and people are patriotic and people will follow what they are told. And that's the way that is. So when I say it doesn't make sense, I mean everything else. The story, again, makes sense, and everything else is great. It's just obviously when you really dig into it, the whole idea behind this war is the part that doesn't make sense. But I love it. I do. It is a cult classic for a reason, because it's a lot of fun. You could do worse for a 2 hour long film. And to be honest, like I would have liked to have seen sort of the more longer moments, but even though those longer moments that we had in the books flushed out a lot more, this movie works as well. You know, you like the whole scene where everybody's naked in the shower. Like, as a young kid, it was great. Boobies, wonderful. You know, and even as an adult, oh, boobies. You know, that's nice as well. But again, it's one of those where it's like, is it needed? No, but at the same time, when everybody's equal and you know you're all becoming citizens, where you're joining in like in the mobile infantry, communal showers, yeah, why not? Why not? In this universe, why not? You know what I mean? What have you got to hide? You're all together, you know, sort of thing. And yeah, I love this movie. It made me fall in love with Disney. It made me just love action movies and science fiction, and it's just good. It's just wonderful. It's a great film. It is. Like I've never met anybody who's never not liked this film. To be honest, everybody that I spoke to, I've all really liked this movie, and it's such a quotable film, and it's great. Like I hadn't even gone into I'm wrapping things up, but I hadn't even gone into proper detail about the fact of Michael Ironside's character, his teacher, chooses Rico to join him, and there are many moments where you kind of feel like the teacher didn't want him to join, but at the same stage, was because in the book it feels at many times where a lot of people are trying to tell Rico, don't do it, don't join, it's not worth it, blah 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 blah. And then when he does join and he does do it, they're like his best friends. Like, this is the best decision you ever made. You're not going to regret it. And it's one of them things where it's a fact of, I feel like, this is my interpretation, the reason a lot of them were doing that was to kind of weed out the wheat from the chaff, to see who was really had it in them to become a citizen, who would not listen to what they was being told to do, and to chart their own course, really, to be like, look, I'm going to fight and I'm going to become a citizen no matter what you say. And those are the ones that you want. You know, you want those patriots, you want those people that are going to do whatever they they believe they're going to do, because they're the people that you can control. And again, it comes back to that sort of idea. And yeah, it just feels like many times that teaches us very much like, don't do it. But then when he does it and he gets chosen to join the Roughnecks, he's like, best decision you ever made. You know, it's great. I just find that interesting. But yeah, overall, Starship Troopers, it's A grade in my books. It's a incredible movie, and it's one of my favorites. But before we kind of come to the end of things, before we wrap it all up in a nice bow, one thing that I like to do, that I've done with a lot of my reviews recently, that I've had a lot of fun with, is that make sure that you follow me on X at Howdy Beans _pod, because whenever I'm watching a movie on there, I'll put it up on the feed, and I'll basically say, like, you know, what do you think of this movie? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? And then write them down below, and I'll give you a shout out in the episode. So if you want to shout out your podcast or yourself or whatever, then by all means follow me on there, and then leave a comment on whatever movie it is on what I'm currently watching, and then I'll shout you out. So obviously, I told everybody I was watching Starship Troopers, and these are the replies. I actually got a lot of replies, to be honest, a lot of long-winded ones, which are brilliant because I love it when people take the time to properly write a lot about a film, because it kind of puts me in a position where I'm more excited to go and watch it. So the first one is from Chat Tsunami. He goes, absolutely love this film. While not like the book, it still makes itself very iconic in its own way. We even reviewed this all the way back in season 1. I'm doing my part. And he leaves a gif of the beginning of the movie where you get that girl. She looks at the camera and goes, I'm doing my part. Then we had Cast a Roll, a movie podcast. They say, this is a movie that was a huge, in capital letters, part of our podcast in our first year. A lot of people did this movie in their first year. Pretty certain it's the movie that streamed the most arguments from the guys. So maybe once people have heard your calm review, I don't know. Have I been calm? I've been more excited, to be honest, and probably political, which I try to stay away from politics. But when you talk about a movie like this, you kind of can't stay away from politics. Anyway, so maybe once people have heard your calm review, they can also check out our madness. And he left a link. I'm just going to retweet that now, actually, because I'm going to go listen to his review of Starship Troopers after I finish this one. But by all means, check out Caster Roll's review of Starship Troopers after you've listened to this one. I'm sure they've done a brilliant job. They usually really, really do. They're actually a pretty fantastic podcast, to be honest. Then there was a comment from David Palmer. He writes, I remember this film being one of the first to spark a mature conversation around its message. In my friend group, despite us being age 16 and the movie being ultra violent, fun and showing us tits, we rewatched it recently and I still love it. Yeah, it is a good movie. And, if you want to see boobies, there's some boobies. Not many, but there is. Then we had Stellar Future Radio. They went, the only good bug, and then I commented back, is a dead bug. Woo! Because you have to. And then we had from the We Need Roads podcast, they leave a GIF that basically goes, the only good bug is a dead bug. That is true. That is very true. Then you had the VHS Abyss movie podcast, another great podcast. They go, it's great. On the surface, just a fun sci-fi action movie, but has a deeper meaning too. I completely agree. It does have a deeper meaning. And I feel like that's why this movie didn't really succeed when it first came out. I feel like when this movie first came out, a lot of people just saw it as, it's a big action movie, science fiction. It's just like all the others. Blah, it's not worth it. But really, when you watch this film and you really start to think, you open your brain, you start to think, and it's one of those where you're like, none of this makes sense. And that is the point. That's the thing. It has deeper meanings of war, of what you're really fighting for, of the meat grinder, of like what war does to people, what war does to a civilization, especially when you've got a civilization that's built off the sort of continual motion of war and fighting and patriotism and all that. This is what leads it to. You have to keep fighting. You've got to keep having meat for the meat grinder, because if you stop, then people start to question of like, wait a second, why are we Federation for? Why are we doing this and that and this? If we're not fighting for anything, again, it's that 2-year service. It's a lie. Because you won't be fighting for 2 years. You will fight for a year, and then it'll be like, oh no, there's another war. Well, I know it said 2 years, but we need you on because we haven't got a lot of soldiers, so we've got to keep you fighting. And you're like, okay, yeah, I'll fight for another 2 years. Oh, and if you manage to survive, you're okay, look, I've done my extra 2 years. It's time for me to go. Well, see, the war's still going on and we still need you. And it's that perpetual motion of like, once you realize then it's too late, you can't back out, you're stuck. And if you leave, you get court-martialed and that's it. You're killed. You know what I mean? So you either leave or desert and be killed, or you keep fighting and potentially, if you're not lucky enough to lose a limb or to lose legs, then you just have to keep fighting. It's until you die. It's as simple as that. So it is a lie, really. It's a minimum of 2 years. It's a lie. Once you're in for life. Your right is to be a citizen is to fight in the war. That's your right as a citizen. It's as simple as that. You know, so yeah, there's a lot of deeper meanings to it. Then we had Stu World Order podcast. He left his entire letterbox um, review of the movie, and I'm going to read it all out because I am hardcore like that. He went, so this came out 4 or 5 years before 9/11, and the war on terror, crazy. Look, apparently the book is super pro-fascism and military superiorism and white imperialism, whatever. I watched this flick and couldn't help but pick up the idea that it was mocking those notions. We have digs at mindless wartime bigotry. We have the idea that the military outright deserves you to get you to join up. And we see the fact that war is goddamn hell and that people die and die brutally. So Verhoeven, the director, took a source material and then took the piss out of it. That's ballsy as fuck. Good for him. So maybe I'm looking too hard at this, but I liked what I thought this movie was laying out. I completely agree with you, Stu. You know, this movie that and the idea behind it is meant to be very sort of pro-war, imperialism, blah, 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 blah. It's meant to be all that. But when you actually watch it, and I felt the same when I read the book, it's the fact of, for me, it was very anti. It was very, well, actually, no, war is hell. I don't want to be in that war. I don't want to fight. None of it makes sense. Why are we fighting the bugs? You know, I'm repeating myself, but yeah, I completely agree with you, Stu. I really, really do. Then we have one from Baron A_W_K. He writes, good choice with great quotes and ton of action. Remember to credit the director as he made other classics as well. I did. I promised to. I would. And that is all that she wrote. So thank you, everybody who replied to that tweet. Again, if you follow me on Twitter at HowdyBeans_pod, when I do watching another movie, by all means, make sure that you comment down below if you want to be shouted out, and I'll read out your comment as well for the episode. So yeah, this film is a lot of things. It has very deep meanings. It's a movie you can watch and enjoy, and it's a movie that you can delve deep into and dig into. No matter what I think you decide to do, I think what can't be disagreed is that it is just a generally good, fun 2-hour movie. Verhoeven did a fantastic job here. He really, really did. He did a brilliant job with the casting. Rico, Casper Van Dam, he looks like Rico. He looks like, the poster boy of what you would imagine the sort of, the blue eyes, the blonde hair sort of patriotic sort of soldier would look like. He's got good looks. He's got the chiseled jawbone. He is the patriotic sort of, archetype is what, you want to strive to be. And that's Rico, really. And then you have Carmen, the gorgeous sort of woman, but again, she's in it for herself, and Dizzy, very sort of strong, powerful, sexy, but she's in love with somebody that's not in love with her. But eventually Johnny realizes that she is the one for him. As his captain says, never miss a good thing, and she is a good thing. It's just a shame by the time he realizes it, it's all for naught because she dies anyway. But still, it's one of those where character development, and it works pretty well. I know that they are talking about potentially doing another Starship Troopers. I have heard rumors that they're going to do another one, and it's going to follow closer towards the book, which I'm all here for, to be honest, because I want to see a version of Starship Troopers where they've got the power armor, where they've got the exosuits, where they're jumping around and they're not just fighting the bugs, they're also fighting the skinnies, they're fighting the other alien race as well. If they decide to have the other alien race in it as well, I don't know. They might just keep sort of to form and have the bugs. But either way, like I want to see more. I want to see again, I just realized what I just said there. Would you like to see more? Yes, I would. I really, really would like to see more. I'd like to see more from this world and flush it out and expand it, and going to see more of Johnny in boot camp, and to see more of Johnny going through those character moments where he's starting to be somebody who joined up for love and then found a real compatriotry and found a real sort of brotherly sort of foundation within the mobile infantry, and what that brings, and the honor that it brings. And yeah, Johnny in the book is a lot more different than Johnny in the film, but either way, both are pretty well done. And so I love this version. I'm more than happy for them to do a more faithful adaptation. I can't wait for that. I think that's in production or currently being written up now, and hopefully will come out in a year or two's time. Either way, I just hope that whatever they do, they don't stick too far with CGI, that they do as much practical as possible. Granted, even though CGI is quite good now, I feel like if they practical, it'd be better. Also, I am after having such a fantastic time with this movie. I'm really tempted to look at the other Starship Troopers movies. I've seen them all apart from the animated one, and they just get sillier and sillier. Especially, I think the third one, and they have like a music number in it, like it's like real religious gospel sort of music in. And I think it's the third one. I can't remember. I think it is. Either way, I'm excited for it. Whatever it is, I'm excited to look at more Starship Troopers movies and just to see where they go. I know where they go because I've seen them, but you know what I'm trying to say is like just to see, what happens next in this world. To be honest, because it is a fun world. It's a silly world. None of it makes sense, but that's the enjoyment of it. Really, is like once you realize nothing makes sense, you can sit there and have fun with it. Because you're not trying too hard to find sense where there isn't any. Anyway, so thank you very much for listening to my review of Starship Troopers. It went on for a lot longer than I thought it was going to, and I do apologize for the rants, and thank you for listening to my TED Talks. But yeah, when you talk about a movie like this, it's kind of hard not to get into those sort of topics because it is a very political movie. So hope you enjoyed those sort of things and my thoughts and feelings and all that kind of jazz. If you like this and you want to see more from me, then make sure, like I said, you follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_pod to be notified of what I'm watching next, what I'm playing next, what I'm reading next. Also, make sure that you give me a follow on Spotify, so you get notified whenever episodes go live on Spotify. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, most importantly. Also, you can leave a comment now on Spotify, as I mentioned at the beginning. So if you scroll down, there'll be a little comment section. You can leave a comment of what you thought, just like YouTube, really, whatever your thoughts and feelings of this episode. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, whatever you feel, again, drop it down below. I'd love to sort of read your comments out. And so I think that's everything. Thank you very much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.